The time gaps between the sources about Jesus and the events are actually compare very favorably, especially when we take into account, and we'll discuss this more obviously, some of these sort of oral summaries that we find embedded in Paul's letters, particularly, seem to go back to within like years or even months of the events. Then that actually is very a very kind of nice situation to be in for an ancient historian.
I agree. That is a very nice place for a historian to be. But that still doesn't help your case for the resurrection of Jesus. You see, Paul adamantly states that he did not get his information from any person on earth. He only got it from a celestial Jesus through visions and the scriptures. This is simply not what we find for other historical figures at the time. We find actual earthly sources, not celestial ones. The Gospels are not considered reliable sources because, for one, they don't cite any kind of sources for their information, and two, the timeline in which these Gospels were written. Mark is our earliest Gospel, but even there, he shows signs of using Paul's theology to inform his work. Mark also seems to derive his story of Jesus from another Jesus, Jesus ben Ananias, who also shares 23 common plot points between them. The other Gospels redact and build upon Mark, so you really only have Mark as the only independent Gospel that there is. That's why the Gospels are not regarded as reliable documents. So we've kind of established you're at least not experts on critical historiography. You're experts in Christian apologetics that have some cherry-picked historical facts thrown in there. Are you at least experts on Christian theology?
But we also have Paul's letters, and Paul unquestionably knew some of the major eyewitnesses, and was writing at a time when those eyewitnesses were still alive, and Paul had clearly received information from them about the circumstances surrounding Jesus' death. So
what? That would completely undermine Paul's entire message of Galatians 1. In order to be an apostle, Paul could not have gotten his information from any person on earth and only through a celestial Jesus through visions and scriptures. Any information that he would have gotten from a person on earth would have nullified his status as an apostle. So you're not experts on historical research and you're not experts on Christian theology. What are you experts on? Because I have no idea. So what kind of historical evidence do you have exactly?
So for example, we know from non-Christian sources alone, from people like Josephus and Tacitus and Pliny and Suetonius, we know that Jesus was a wise man. He worked miracles. He was called the Messiah. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate in the reign of Tiberius. Multiple non-Christian sources say that. But also he was prayed to as a god or worshipped as a god. We know Christians met on a fixed day, which we think is likely the Sunday, which is interesting for reasons we'll get into in a little while.
Okay, so Josephus was written near the end of the 1st century, and there are multiple papers that are written on how the Testimonium Flavianum is simply nothing that Josephus would actually write. It was most likely inserted by a later Christian scribe. This would be like Eusebius of Caesarea or his mentor. The second passage, the James reference, is most likely interpolated because later on in that very same passage, they reference a completely different Jesus. The portion at the beginning that identifies this Jesus as the Christ looks more like a marginal scribal note than it does an actual thing that Josephus would write. Whew! And then there's Tacitus, which is the thing that apologists just love to bring out. If we take Tacitus at face value, all that we can really say is that Christians were in Rome during the burning of Rome. And that's all we can really say about it. You see, Tacitus was writing to Pliny the Younger, who he was regular pen pals with. So he would have most likely gotten any actual Jesus Christ specific information from Pliny the Younger, who was currently interrogating Christians at the time. So really, all Tacitus does is reflect the current 2nd century beliefs of Christians. There actually is good evidence to suggest that this was interpolated, though, at least the portions that are very specific to what's in the Gospels. For one thing, the Christus that appears in Tacitus is actually Christus. It's been changed through scribal interpolations. And then, of course, as I said with Pliny, he was writing in the 2nd century as well. He was interrogating Christians, and so therefore he was just regurgitating 2nd century Christian beliefs. Suetonius is in the same realm as Tacitus, because Suetonius, all he does is places the Christians in the 50s in that area. That's nothing that we already didn't know. We already knew that information. You see, this is what I mean by critical examination of the evidence. What you gotta do is take off your Christ-colored glasses and actually critically look at the evidence. I mean, you guys aren't even trying to feign it. Hell, they go on to say that the Jews weren't even expecting a resurrecting Messiah.